welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, 18-hour special initiative that celebrates the undying entrepreneurial spirit of micro, small and medium enterprises. On the show today, we take your emails, your calls, as well as your social media queries. And to answer those queries with me in studio, I have Dr. Anil Menon. He's faculty at the SP Jain School of Management. I also have Sushanto Mitra, he's the founder and CEO of the Lead Angels Network. Gentlemen, thank you both very much for coming down. Let's start off then with our first call coming in from S. Chug. Go ahead.
The nature of present stockbroking business has become over-competitive. There is practical no exit route for the stockbroking, even if a broker wants to come out of the business. Neither do they support, stock exchanges or SEBI support merger or amalgamation amongst the broking community. My question is, why a minimum brokerage is not put by the SEBI, or in alternate, an exit route is provided for a broker to come out of his business.
Okay, so would you want to start?
In any business, there can't be a minimum brokerage. So it has become competitive with discount brokers and full-scale brokers coming in. But a possible solution for the gentleman would be to think of some value-added services which he could possibly entail to his clients, get as a sub-broker to the main brokers, right, and then see what could be the additional service that he can give. Currently, there is no question of a minimum brokerage. In fact, brokerages have been reduced. Some of them have actually gone on a very, very minimal brokerage with high volumes. So, you'll have to relook his business model.
So, I'm assuming that he doesn't have a huge set of clients. That's why he's worried about his business volume is not large enough. So, as Professor said, to probably add to his suite of products that, get into distribution of other financial products and do other advisory, portfolio management. So, he can increase his bouquet of services that will keep the customers satisfied, because he will meet more of their requirements than just broking. So, that would be my advice.
All right, I hope that answers your query. Let's take in now an email coming in from V. Satyanarayana. He says that he faces a lot of competition from companies who are copying their design and selling it though for lesser by compromising on the quality of the product. He says they do enlighten their customers about the additional and essential features of the proposals and how it's different over competitors, but often that they end up losing business. He wants to know how they convince customers about the benefits of buying a good and reliable product, and how do they prevent copying by other, and in his own words, incompetent organizations. So maybe I'd like to start with you.
Yeah, so I think first of all, if he is not copyrighted his designs, he should do that. It's not the. But
isn't that a huge cost for MSME?
No, it's not very expensive, and at least it is of course does not stop somebody from copying you, but there is some sort of fear that you will do a court case or something like that. So that is one. Two is that one could look at, again, offering services which their competitors cannot give, or continuously changing their designs. So, innovate all the time so that their competition cannot copy as fast as they can. So, these would be my two pieces of advice to him.
Again, two things to add to what my dear colleague said. One, value added services, possibly convince the customer of how the products can be beneficial over the long term. And today, post the current liberalization, it's much easier to apply for patents. In fact, government subsidizes. So 50% of the cost is borne by the MSME when you actually apply for patents.
Let's take in our next query, and this is a call coming in from Jayendra Pandya. Go ahead, Jayendra.
My question is, why the pharmaceutical distributors are not provided the finance working capital at low interest in spite of having a good safety profile?
The MSMEs constantly seem to be in this mode where they're struggling to raise finance. NPAs aren't looking good. That must be impacting sentiment as well. So how would you advise, and I'd like each of you gentlemen to comment on this, what would your advice be in terms of raising finance?
So I think one is that today there are apart from banks, there are other NBFCs and some of the startups in the financing space which have come up. So, while they should continue to try to get loans from public sector banks and private banks, they should also explore the newer platforms which have come up in the last 6 months to explore that. There are also your chartered accountant, or there are other advisors who are there who can help you to traverse a fairly complicated road to getting working capital loans from banks.
Professor?
There is something known as priority sector norms in banking. So, actually MSMEs fall under priority sector norms. For the respected colleague and for the dear audience, 40% of loans have to be given to priority sector. So, if you approach a bank with the right credentials and with the right, I would say the right papers, it's actually easy to get a loan if you are an SME sector, right? And the current NPAs, as we all know, is actually coming from the bigger corporates, not only from the SMEs. So, the request to a gentleman would be to first register himself under Udyog Aadhaar, that will give him the tag of SME, then go across to a bank and then apply under the priority sector norms.
All right, so that's as far as raising of finance is concerned. Let's take in now a Facebook query coming in from Ram Nivas Soni. He says he's in the hardware and metal business and wants to know how to manage your stock actively. He says that while they deliver products to clients on time and they make payments very late. So, a two-part question really. One, he's saying how do they manage stock, and also how do they ensure that the larger clients, and this is again a query that we get very often, saying that we are being forced to pay our dues on time, but the deliverables which are coming from our larger clients isn't necessarily coming on time. So, how do we manage the two?
The first thing is he needs an MIS, an internal SAP, so that he can manage his stock properly. It need not be a very complicated software, simple software. The second query about the receivables, that's a serious problem. So, what he could do is, one, apply to the bank for discounting facilities, but discounting is typically where, even if the customer does not pay, the client is supposed to pay up. So, in this case, since he is clearly saying that he is suffering from delay of payments, if they are very good clients, he should apply for what we call as factoring services from banks. And in India, right, for the information of the audience also, India Factors, SBI Factors specifically addresses what is known as the factoring needs of clients. So, all that the SME has to do is send the goods, get the bill factored, and all the collection and receivables are then taken care by the bank. It is important to note that before you send the goods, the bank needs to vet the client to whom you are sending the goods. So, that is one of the options that I have suggested to many of my clients. So, if you are dealing with a public sector unit, if you are dealing with a B plus rated company, factoring services are available for taking care of receivable management.
I just want to flip what you've said around on its head. Like we're looking at a separate, a framework or a regulatory framework as far as financing goes. Do you think this could also come under that to ensure that, your larger clients do pay within a certain framework for MSMEs where financing is a challenge, because the government is pushing Digital India, Skill India, for example, which is benefiting the MSMEs, but finance still continues to be a challenge. So, could there be some kind of a regulatory framework that governs it?
There is a regulatory framework. In fact, you cannot delay the payments of SMEs right beyond 45 days. If you do so, they can actually go to the court and get a verdict against you.
Which comes at an additional cost.
Yeah, right. No, the point is nobody goes to the court because then you lose the client forever.
This is not something that's going to change. It's people's mindsets have to change more than anything. I think all large parts of India, people are slow in making payments on whenever they are on the other side of the table, and that has to change. And one way of probably doing it is not so much from the government, rather get associations, industry associations to sort of self-regulate themselves in this, because that is probably a better regulation. Enforcement will be much stronger if it is self-regulated rather than being regulated from the government. So that would be my suggestion.
All right, so let's take a very short break then on this show, but don't go anywhere. We'll continue taking all of your queries, calls and emails on the other side. Just stay tuned. Welcome back. You're with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, and we are answering all of your queries that you've sent in to us. The next query is a call from K. Jose. Go ahead.
We are into service industry like 3PL, warehousing and technical services. I would like to know, for the service industry, what are all the advantages of being registered with MSME? Banks generally need collaterals or some mortgage to give loan or overdraft facilities. However, for service industry, the service itself is its product and there are nothing tangible to mortgage. Why don't banks support based on past performance data and future plans at nominal interest? Considering the high stakes the banks are now in by lending huge amounts to large firms, it won't be a big risk to support service industry. There should be a cell within MSME to deal with grievances of service industry.
All right, Mr. Jose, thanks for that query. And so we were talking about the regulatory framework for finance. So he also wants to know about the service industry specifically. So the government is talking about pushing GST, and I'm assuming that they're putting in place a very thorough, robust framework which will also support MSMEs and grassroots industries. But even as we're looking at that, what advice would you have?
So I think, as far as banks are concerned, they do finance your receivables that you may have from whether it's services or products. So banks necessarily don't differentiate. The only problem comes because since they don't have any inventories, you cannot hypothecate that, but you do get finance against receivables. But maybe you would like to add to that.
He could also use the unsecured loans, right? So there is a gentleman was talking about services sector. Specifically for the services sector, right, there is something known as an unsecured loan. Up to 1 crore is given for working capital requirements also. The only thing, again, flipping back, is he's talking about cash flow based financing. Now, if you want to go for cash flow based financing, then rather than approaching only banks, it would be better to approach
the new age financial services, funding services which have come up now.
Would that also hold for the first part of his question? He says, what are some of the advantages of being registered as an MSME?
In that, there are a couple of things. One, any project reports that he generates, there is part funding from the government. Right, he is eligible for subsidies in, we call it subventions, in the interest rate. And third, if he is an MSME, as I said for the previous query, he would fall under priority sector. So immediately that becomes easier for him to borrow.
Where actually you can get loans without a collateral, what is called the CGT SME scheme, where you can get loans without collateral.
Okay. Mr. Jose, I hope that answers your query. Let's take in another one. This is a Facebook query coming in from Arvind Garg. He says, we make and supply generator machines in Agra. He wants to expand his business in other cities as well. How can I expand my business, and which cities can I sell my products in, is the query coming in from Arvind. Very specific to his business. We don't have more details in terms of how large the business is, etc. But as a framework and as a thumb rule for any MSME who's looking to expand, what would your advice be?
What he needs to do is, one, carry out a proper market research to the place that he wants to launch the product. See if the characteristics match. My experience has been that, a lot of these growth options, these colleagues suffer because they believe that it's the same market on the other end. So he needs to have a proper market research that's done. Second, he needs to identify which customers are already he could possibly service and the existing competitors. My request to the gentleman is, again, it's a very short query. He should handle this with very, very important care, because the industry itself is very, very competitive. So when we say the generator machines, it's a very competitive business. So he should actually get into expansion only after doing thorough research.
He should definitely study that market, because trade practices, demand patterns, everything changes. Even though he's in a, the good thing is that he's in, making gen sets, which is a problem all across India, but market practices, demand patterns are different, and he should, especially being a very competitive industry, do his homework before he enters a new area. He might also consider selling other products to his existing marketplace. Rather than that, might just be a better way of leveraging the client relationships that he already has, than to get new. It's always more expensive to get a new customer than to sell more to your existing customer.
Fair enough. Let's take in the next query. This is an email coming to us from DS Cherian. He says he would like clarity on the various facilities of NASSCOM to facilitate startups, and also he wants to know how he can go about being a mentor at such startups. So let's take the first part of the query, specifically related of course to IT companies. We're talking about NASSCOM.
So NASSCOM has this program called 10,000 startups, where startups can register themselves, and NASSCOM provides a lot of support in terms of connecting them to investors, to mentors, and even sometimes has programs taking them overseas for visiting developed markets. So that's what NASSCOM has. There is, as I said, so on this platform, mentors, investors can also join in and support the startups which are there. So
are there any
Cherian
qualifications specifically for
no, really,
to become
you
a
just
mentor?
need to give your experience and background and put yourself on the platform.
Okay. Professor, you want to add to that?
He could also look at beyond NASSCOM. He could look at the private funding, right? I'm sure, right, even lead angels, right? Even the mentors. If you say Mumbai Angels, all of them need mentors. So since he is kind enough to offer himself as a mentor, he should get in touch with such organizations so that they can talk to him and see where best he can fit.
Even some of the university incubators are looking for mentors.
Like the one you used to be associated with.
That's
Sure.
right.
Okay. All right. The next call coming in from Manglesh Saxena. Go ahead, Manglesh.
See, we are small scale industries, and there are many small scale industries in India. Every industry want to grow in local market as well as in international market. For that, the government should give us some concessions to participate in exhibitions in local media as well as in overseas exhibitions. Whereas we are getting just MDA and MAI schemes, which are not fulfilling our task, and we are not satisfied with this because these are sponsored by the government only. When we have the sponsorship of the government, only then we can get the benefit. So I would request to give benefits in all the exhibitions wherever it is going on by the government of India.
Okay. All right, Manglesh. So, while he is of course asking about discounts and benefits when it comes to, international business, I think the larger question is also in terms of support which is being given to MSMEs if they're looking at, international business, looking at going global. So, both from, both from this perspective as well as specifically to his query, what would you have to say?
One, if he is doing international business, he will get subsidies. So there is an export subsidy per se. But when I was listening to his query, his specific, I thought his pain point was, he said, we are not registered with the government, hence there is no fallout of that, because the government insists that you need to get registered for availing any discounts, any subsidies that come into play. So the first advice to the gentleman is to please get himself registered. Any exhibition costs, etc., can be part funded by the government to the extent of 30% is what the government is saying under the current scheme which has been outlined. But having said that, he needs to be very specific and he needs to go back to the concerned agency because he has not mentioned his business per se, and get it done through the association. So the request for him would be to approach the association to go ahead and do it.
Completely agree with him. I think also that it is to see what other companies, how have other companies done it, and then follow that example.
Sure. All right, time for one last query, and this is a Facebook query coming in from L. Shekhar. He says he wants finance for his business. So he's asking our panel of experts how he goes about finding investors, or how he goes about really raising this capital. We don't have details of what the business he's involved in. But that said, again, as a guidebook, as a thumb rule for MSMEs and SMEs who are looking to raise finance, how do they make themselves more investment ready?
3 rules. One, scalability. So he should have a business model which is scalable. I'm sure the expert here, the investor here, will add to it. But my entire study of this entire sector is 3 rules. One, scalability. Second, profitability. So right, there should be some profit on the books. If not now, at least in the near future. And third, most important, sustainability. we call this the moat structure. So the way the investors ask questions is, first question is they'll keep asking is this model scalable? Do you have a growth plan attached to it? When do you see the profits coming in terms of, are you giving a value add to customers? Are customers ready to pay the price you are asking? Third, yes, you're making money now, maybe you'll make money next year. Is it sustainable over the long run, right? And unfortunately, if you see, in most cases, I should confess that it's in the third factor that many of them, falter, the sustainability part. So if you look at the entire investor angle who's looking at right, funding and investing in equity, right, the questions will be more about these three aspects.
Okay, I just want to tweak the question for you a little. When you're looking at investing in a company, what are some of the things that you look for, the top 3 things, and what are some of the things that really put you off, sort of sound alarm bells off for you?
So I think, one thing of course is the market. How large is the market that the product is, because finally investors are looking to see businesses which can scale. So that is one. 2 is, does the team have the capability to be able to take the company forward into that market? And last is it a very capital intensive business? From our perspective, we are angel investors, so we don't look at very capital intensive businesses. We look at businesses which require technology or require innovation more than the capital that they are looking at. So we look at how the capital intensity should be low as far as we are concerned.
All right, so that wraps up our show for today. Thank you both very much for coming down to our studios and answering all of our queries. Do remember, you can always get in touch with us. Write to us at leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com. You can reach us on social media using the hashtag LOT, or call us on the number which is on your screen to get our experts to answer your queries. Thanks so much for watching.